Olivia Wilson is a nurse and the mother of Aiden, a 12-year-old smart and kind-hearted boy. She and her husband, Robert, a pharmaceutical sales manager, have a happy family life in Greenville, Michigan. However, one day, Olivia uncovers a horrifying truth about her husband. Robert had planned to kill her in order to collect life insurance money, and he was having an affair with a woman named Jennifer. While Olivia and Aiden were at home, Aiden discovered messages between Robert and Jennifer on his tablet. Worried, the boy begged his mother to leave the house immediately. Meanwhile, an explosion occurred in their home, and Aiden managed to save his mother from Robert's plot. Olivia and Aiden escaped and contacted the police. After an investigation, Robert and Jennifer were arrested for attempted murder and insurance fraud. In the end, Olivia and Aiden started a new life in a small town by Lake Michigan, where they gradually healed and found peace once again. If you've been moved by Olivia and Aiden's story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more emotional and inspiring tales. Share your thoughts with us. How far would you go to protect the ones you love? Olivia Wilson stood in the quiet kitchen, her hands wiping the flour off her apron as she gazed out the window. The golden hues of autumn washed over the small town of Greenville, Michigan, where she had built her life, full of love, sacrifice, and dreams of a future with her family. The rustling of the trees outside mirrored her thoughts, peaceful, yet filled with a deep longing. She had worked so hard for this life, balancing her nursing career with being a mother to her growing son Aiden and a supportive wife to Robert. As Olivia turned away from the window, she heard the familiar sound of Aiden's voice from the dining table, his frustration clearly rising as he struggled with his math homework. "Mom, I don't understand this problem," he called out. Olivia smiled softly, her heart swelling with pride. Aiden, her sweet 12-year-old boy, had the same blue eyes as hers, always eager to learn and full of curiosity about the world. The thought of how much he had grown brought a wave of emotion over her as she sat down beside him to help solve the fraction problem. The family's life in this quiet town may not have been wealthy, but it was filled with warmth, love, and a sense of stability. Olivia's husband, Robert, worked hard as a successful sales manager at a pharmaceutical company, always providing for their little family. And while Robert's work trips often took him away, Olivia knew that he did it all for them to secure a better future. But lately, things had begun to feel different. The distance between them had slowly crept in, and the cracks that were once barely noticeable now seemed more apparent. Little did Olivia know, as she sat there helping Aiden with his homework, that everything she had known, the life she had built, the love she thought was unwavering, was about to shatter in ways she couldn't have imagined. This is a story of betrayal, of a mother's fierce love for her son, and the ultimate fight to reclaim what was rightfully hers. But sometimes, the person closest to you, who you thought you knew, can betray you in the most unimaginable ways. How far would you go to protect the ones you love? And what happens when the very person you trust turns out to be the greatest danger of all? Let's begin this journey together. Olivia took a deep breath as she stood by the window, the cool autumn breeze gently brushing through the leaves outside. She had always loved the peacefulness of Greenville. It was a town where everyone knew each other, where life moved at a slow and steady pace, much like her own. But recently, even the quiet felt unsettling, like a storm brewing in the distance. It was hard to ignore the small changes. Robert's increasing business trips, the tension that lingered in the air when he was home, the growing silence between them after Aiden went to bed. That night, after dinner, Olivia sat with Robert on the couch, the soft glow of the lamp casting shadows around the room. She had been so proud of him when they first met. He had been ambitious, driven, and so incredibly loving, but now something felt off. It wasn't just the long hours he spent away on business trips. It was the way he had started to retreat into himself, as if he were hiding something. "How was your day at the hospital?" Robert asked, massaging her shoulders as she leaned back against him. Olivia closed her eyes, trying to relax, but her mind was elsewhere. She thought about the patients she had seen in the emergency room that day, the flu season beginning to take its toll. She thought about the overwhelming exhaustion she felt, both physically and emotionally. "Busy," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "We're starting to see more patients coming in with the flu, but I did make it to Aiden's school event today. He's growing so fast." Olivia paused, her voice catching in her throat as she looked over at her son, who had long since fallen asleep in his room. "He's becoming such a young man. It feels like just yesterday he was a little boy." "Yeah, he's a great kid," Robert replied, his voice warm but distant. He kissed her gently on the forehead, his mind clearly elsewhere. Olivia felt a pang of sadness. She had grown used to Robert's long hours and the distance that had begun to creep into their relationship. But tonight, something in the air felt different. The next morning, Robert left for his business trip to Chicago. Olivia kissed him goodbye, as usual, her heart heavy with the familiar routine. Aiden was still in bed, his school bag packed and ready for the day. As Robert climbed into the taxi, Olivia waved goodbye, holding back the lump in her throat. She had grown accustomed to these goodbyes, but each one felt harder than the last. "Take care of your mom while I'm gone, buddy," Robert said to Aiden, giving him a quick hug. "I will, Dad," Aiden promised, his voice serious. He was growing up fast, and Olivia couldn't help but feel proud of him, but she also noticed the way Aiden's eyes lingered on Robert as he left, a trace of concern flashing across his face. Olivia brushed it off, telling herself it was just the normal worry of a boy missing his father. But as the taxi disappeared around the corner, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The first day without Robert was always the hardest. Olivia woke up earlier than usual, the house feeling quieter than it ever had before. Aiden, still groggy from sleep, joined her in the kitchen, and they went through their morning routine. But something about Aiden seemed different today. He was quieter than usual, his gaze distant as he sat at the table, barely touching his breakfast. "Mom," he said softly, his voice almost a whisper, "do you think Dad will be okay on his trip?" Olivia looked at her son, her heart swelling with both love and concern. "Of course, honey. Dad's a tough guy. He'll be fine." But even as she said the words, Olivia couldn't ignore the tightness in her chest. Something about Aiden's question made her uneasy. That evening, as Olivia finished her shift at the hospital, she stopped by the store to pick up Robert's favorite wine, hoping to make the evening feel a little more normal. She thought it might cheer them up, a small gesture of normalcy in the midst of their changing lives. But as she stood in line at the register, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, expecting a message from Robert, but instead it was Aiden's voice echoing in her mind. When she arrived home, Aiden was sitting in the living room, his tablet open on his lap, but something was off. His usual enthusiasm was gone, replaced by a deep, unsettling quiet. As she walked toward him, he didn't even look up from the screen. "Aiden," Olivia called out softly, trying to sound casual. "What are you working on?" Aiden didn't respond right away. He simply tapped at the screen, his fingers moving quickly over the device. Finally, he looked up, his face pale and his eyes bloodshot. "Mom, I need to talk to you about something." Olivia's heart skipped a beat. "What's wrong, honey?" Aiden hesitated, his gaze dropping back to the tablet in his lap. I think Dad's been hiding something bad." His voice quivered, and Olivia could see the fear in his eyes. "Sweetheart, what are you talking about?" Olivia asked, kneeling beside him. But as she reached out to comfort him, Aiden quickly pulled the tablet away. "I'm not sure, but I think you need to see this," he whispered, his voice trembling. Olivia's heart pounded in her chest as Aiden slowly handed her the tablet. What she saw on the screen made her blood run cold. The messages between Robert and another woman, a woman she had never heard of before, flashed across the screen. At first, the messages seemed harmless enough, casual exchanges between two people who had obviously shared a history. But as Olivia scrolled down, the tone of the messages changed. They grew more intimate, more personal, and then she saw it, something that made her heart stop. "We'll do it tonight. She'll never see it coming. The gas leak will make it look like an accident." Olivia felt her hands shake as she read the message, the words sinking into her mind with a horror she couldn't comprehend. She couldn't breathe. It was like the world had tilted beneath her feet. "What is this, Aiden?" Olivia whispered, her voice barely a breath. "What does this mean?" Before Aiden could answer, the sound of the front door echoed through the house. Robert was home early. Olivia froze, her pulse racing. This wasn't the man she had married. This wasn't the man who had promised to love and protect her. And yet, here he was, standing in the doorway, his smile wide and unsuspecting. But something in his eyes, the way he looked at her, the way his posture seemed too stiff, too controlled, told her that everything was about to change. Olivia's heart raced as she stood frozen in the living room, the tablet still clutched tightly in her hands. The words she had just read echoed in her mind like a terrible whisper. Robert's casual voice floated over her as he walked through the door, the same man who had kissed her goodnight every night for over a decade, the man she had trusted with everything she had. But now, standing before her, he seemed like a stranger. "Hey, babe," Robert said with his usual smile, setting down his briefcase and taking off his jacket. "Did you get the wine? I'm starving." His voice was warm, but it didn't reach Olivia's heart. She couldn't speak immediately. She just stared at him, the weight of the truth pulling at her chest. She wanted to scream, to confront him with the evidence in her hands, but something in her gut told her to wait. She had to be sure. She had to see how he would act first. Her fingers tightened around the tablet as she watched him move through the room, seemingly unaware of the storm brewing in her mind. "Olivia!" Robert's voice snapped her out of her thoughts. "You okay?" She nodded, trying to steady herself. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just been a long day." He raised an eyebrow but didn't press further. Instead, he walked over to her and kissed her on the cheek as if nothing were wrong. Olivia's skin crawled at the touch. The man she had loved for so long, the man she thought she knew, was hiding something far darker than she could have imagined. "Dinner will be ready in just a minute," Olivia said, forcing the words past the tightness in her throat. "Aiden's in his room." She turned away from him, her back to Robert, as she tried to breathe deeply and gather her thoughts. "Great," Robert said casually. "I'll check in on him in a minute. Did you hear back from the hospital? How's work?" Olivia nodded, her thoughts spinning. "Busy," she replied automatically, even though her mind was still on the tablet and the incriminating messages. Same as usual. She didn't want to say too much. The less she said, the less chance he had to slip up, but the silence between them was thick, suffocating. A few minutes passed as Olivia prepared dinner, trying to focus on the task at hand, but every sound, every movement of Robert's was like a reminder that everything in their life had been a lie. When dinner was finally ready, She called Aiden to the table. Her son came down the stairs slowly, his eyes downcast. He hadn't said much since the earlier conversation, but Olivia could tell he was just as unsettled as she was. He was carrying a burden far too heavy for a 12-year-old to bear. When they all sat down at the table, Robert talked about his meetings and his plans for the next day. But Olivia barely listened. The noise of his voice felt like static in the background as she continued to stew over the evidence in her mind. She could feel Aiden's eyes on her, and she knew he could sense her unease. She tried to smile, tried to make everything seem normal, but it felt like the walls were closing in around her. The evening passed in a strange, unnatural quiet, with only small, forced exchanges between the family. When Robert finally excused himself to go to bed, Olivia and Aiden were left alone in the dimly lit dining room. "Mom," Aiden said in a small, worried voice, "what's going to happen?" Olivia didn't have an answer. She didn't know how to explain the unthinkable to her son. How could she possibly find the words to tell him that the man they had trusted was capable of something so horrific? Instead, she just pulled him close, wrapping her arms around him tightly. "We'll be okay, honey," Olivia whispered, though her own heart was breaking. "We're going to be okay." But deep inside, Olivia wasn't sure if she could believe that anymore. Later that night, when Aiden had gone to bed, Olivia found herself pacing the living room, her mind racing. The words from the messages still lingered in her thoughts. The plan was clear. The explosion had been meant to kill her. It had all been calculated, right down to the moment when she would be too tired to escape. It felt like a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. But Olivia knew one thing for sure. She couldn't let this continue. She had to get to the bottom of what was happening, and she had to protect Aiden. There was no more room for hesitation. She had to confront Robert, even if it meant losing everything she had once known. Olivia pulled out her phone, hands trembling, and texted Robert, "I need to talk to you. Now." She waited in silence, the seconds stretching into what felt like an eternity. When her phone buzzed with a new message, her heart skipped a beat. It was from Robert. "I'm sorry. I can't talk right now. I'm exhausted. Let's talk tomorrow." Olivia's stomach dropped. She could feel the fear creeping up on her. This was it. She couldn't wait anymore. She had to act. She grabbed the tablet from the counter and opened it again. This time, she started taking screenshots of the messages. She had to have something to hold on to when the inevitable confrontation came. As she took the photos, she could hear Robert moving around upstairs. It was like time had frozen, and all she could do was prepare herself for the inevitable showdown. Just as she was about to put the tablet down, a loud knock echoed from the front door. Olivia's blood ran cold. She could hear Robert's voice on the other side, but it sounded off, like he was trying to hide something. "Olivia, open the door. It's me, Robert." But his voice was wrong. The familiarity was gone, replaced by something colder, more menacing. Olivia's instincts screamed at her to stay away from the door, but she couldn't ignore the urgency in Robert's voice. She took a deep breath, her mind spinning. What was happening? What had he done? Then, Aiden's voice echoed from the hallway. "Mom, don't open the door, please." Olivia turned to her son, his face pale and filled with fear. "What's going on, Aiden?" she asked, her voice shaky. "He's not Dad," Aiden whispered, his eyes wide with terror. "Mom, we have to leave. Now!" Olivia's heart pounded in her chest as she tried to process what her son had just said. Robert was standing outside, but Aiden was telling her that something was terribly wrong. "Aiden, what do you mean?" Olivia asked, her voice barely a whisper. "I'll explain later. Please, we need to go," Aiden urged, grabbing her hand and pulling her toward the back door. The doorbell rang again, this time accompanied by desperate knocking. "Olivia, open the door!" Robert's voice was more insistent now, more frantic. Without thinking, Olivia followed Aiden, her body moving on autopilot. She could hear Robert's voice growing louder, but her son's grip on her arm was stronger than any fear she had. She had to trust him. They slipped out the back door into the yard, and Aiden led her to the car. Olivia's hands were shaking as she fumbled for the keys, her mind spinning with confusion and fear. Aiden jumped into the passenger seat, his face streaked with tears. "Mom, drive," Aiden said urgently, his voice filled with panic. "Please, just go." Olivia stepped on the accelerator, her heart pounding as she drove away from the house, not looking back. But when she glanced in the rearview mirror, she saw black smoke rising from the house. She couldn't believe it. Their home was on fire. As she drove down the dark, rain-soaked streets, she had no idea where they were going. All she knew was that she had to protect Aiden no matter what. She had to keep him safe. She had to keep them both alive. Olivia's heart raced as she drove through the dark streets, her mind swirling with confusion and fear. The smoke from their house loomed large in her rearview mirror, the flames rising in the distance as though consuming everything she had worked for. The man she had loved, the life they had built together, gone in an instant, torn apart by betrayal, deception, and a plot so vile she could scarcely believe it was real. Aiden sat beside her, his small frame tense with worry. His hand gripped the seat, knuckles white, as he stared straight ahead. "Mom," Aiden whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "What's going to happen now?" Olivia glanced over at him, her heart breaking all over again. How could she explain? How could she make him understand that the world they had known was no longer the same, that everything had changed in the blink of an eye? She wanted to pull him into her arms, to hold him close and shield him from the nightmare that was unfolding, but she knew the reality was far worse than anything they had ever faced before. "Aiden, I don't know," Olivia said softly, her voice trembling, "but we're going to be okay. We're together, and that's what matters." But even as she said the words, a cold pit of uncertainty settled in her stomach. They weren't safe yet. Robert was out there, and who knew what he might do next? The fear she had felt before was now replaced with a sense of cold determination. She had to protect Aiden, no matter the cost. They continued driving through the rain-soaked streets, past neighborhoods they didn't recognize, the unfamiliarity of it all sinking in. Olivia's hands were still shaking on the steering wheel, her mind racing. Where could they go? Who could they turn to? Robert was out there, and though he had been arrested, she knew he would stop at nothing to get what he wanted. Aiden spoke again, his voice quieter this time. "Mom, where are we going?" Olivia bit her lip, glancing at him briefly. "I don't know yet, honey, but we'll figure it out." They drove in silence for a while longer, the sound of the rain tapping against the windshield the only noise in the car. Olivia kept her eyes on the road, the headlights illuminating the wet asphalt ahead. She couldn't help but feel the weight of what had happened. The explosion, the messages, Robert's betrayal. How had she not seen it coming? How could she have been so blind to the man she had loved? It wasn't until she reached a quiet street, one that seemed to lead nowhere in particular, that Olivia pulled over and turned off the engine. She sat there for a moment, the silence of the car enveloping them both. The weight of the moment pressed down on her, and she could feel the tears threatening to spill. "Aiden," she said, her voice hoarse, "I don't know what to do. I don't know how we're going to get through this." Aiden's small voice came from beside her. "We'll get through it, Mom. We always do." She turned to look at him, her heart swelling with pride. Despite everything, despite the fear and the uncertainty, Aiden had remained strong, had kept his head when she felt like she was falling apart. He was the reason she was still breathing, still fighting. She would never forget the look in his eyes when he had told her to run, when he had dragged her out of the house before it exploded. He had saved her life. Tears blurred Olivia's vision, but she wiped them away quickly, trying to maintain control. "You're right," she whispered. "We will get through this. Together." Just as she said the words, Olivia's phone buzzed on the dashboard. She glanced at the screen and saw a message from the detective. "We have news. Robert has been arrested. We've found Jennifer Blake too. They're both in custody. We've confirmed the explosion was deliberate. The gas line was cut." Olivia's breath caught in her throat. She had known it was coming, had felt it in the pit of her stomach, but hearing the words confirmed it. Her husband, the man she had spent years with, the man she had trusted with her life, had been planning to kill her. And Jennifer Blake? Who was she? Another piece of the puzzle she hadn't seen. Olivia wiped her eyes, trying to focus on the message. She read it again, feeling the weight of the words. "Thank you," she typed back, her fingers trembling. "I'm glad they're in custody, but I don't know what to do now. We're safe for now, but I don't know where we go from here." The detective's response came quickly. "We're taking care of it. We'll have a safe place for you and Aiden to stay. Don't worry. We'll make sure you're protected." Olivia let out a sigh of relief. For the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to relax just a little. They were going to be okay, but the road ahead was still uncertain. The trial, the custody battle, the endless questions. She didn't know what the future held, but she would face it head on. Olivia looked at Aiden, who was still staring out the window, his face pale but determined. "We're going to be okay," she whispered, more to herself than to him. Aiden nodded. "I know we will, Mom." She reached over and took his hand, holding it tightly in her own. No matter what came next, she knew they could face it together. As mother and son, they were a team, and nothing, not even the betrayal of the man she had loved, could break that bond. A few minutes later, Olivia started the engine again and pulled back onto the road. The uncertainty of the future still hung heavy in the air, but with each mile, she felt a little lighter. They weren't alone. They had each other, and that was enough. For now, it was enough. As Olivia drove down the dark, rain-soaked streets, a sense of numbness settled in her chest. The world outside seemed to move in slow motion, each drop of rain on the windshield blurring her thoughts. Her hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, but she couldn't shake the feeling of uncertainty that gripped her heart. She had just found out that the man she had shared a life with, the father of her child, had plotted to end her life. How could she process such a thing? Every moment, every memory with Robert now felt like a lie. Their years of marriage, the moments of laughter and joy, they had all been built on a foundation of deception. But even through the fog of betrayal, there was a flicker of something stronger, something that had been with her all along, the love for her son. Aiden, sitting beside her, was quiet now, the silence between them heavy. She could feel his sadness, his confusion, and yet she knew that despite everything, he had been the one to save them. His bravery had brought them this far, and it was his strength that gave her the courage to keep going. "Mom, do you think things will ever be the same?" Aiden's voice broke the silence, small and vulnerable. Olivia's heart ached at the question. Could things ever be the same? Could they ever return to the life they once knew? She wasn't sure, but she knew they couldn't keep looking back. "I don't know, Aiden," Olivia said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "But what I do know is that we have each other, and we will make our new life together, one step at a time." Aiden nodded, his gaze still fixed out the window. Olivia wished she could take away the pain, the fear that clung to him, but all she could offer was the truth. They had lost everything, but they hadn't lost each other. The rain had slowed to a drizzle by the time they reached the safe house the police had arranged for them. It was a small, unassuming place, nestled away from the prying eyes of the world. They had been told it would be temporary, just until things settled down. But as they pulled into the driveway, Olivia felt a strange sense of peace. It wasn't home, not yet, but it was a place where they could breathe. "Here we are," Olivia said as she turned off the engine. Aiden unbuckled his seatbelt and climbed out of the car, looking around at the unfamiliar house. It wasn't much, but it was theirs for now. They entered the small, cozy home and set down their things. Olivia led Aiden to his new room, a modest space with simple furniture and a window that looked out onto the quiet street. Aiden sat on the bed and stared out the window, his thoughts far away. "Mom," he called, breaking the silence again. "Yeah?" Olivia walked over and sat beside him. "Do you think we'll ever be okay again? Like, really okay?" Olivia smiled gently, her heart full of love for this child who had been through so much already. "I think we will, Aiden. It's going to take time, but we will find our way. And no matter what, we'll always be okay, as long as we're together." She pulled him into a hug, feeling the weight of the past few days on her shoulders. But in that moment, with her son in her arms, she found a spark of hope. Maybe they would never go back to the way things were, but maybe, just maybe, they could build something even stronger, something rooted in love, trust, and resilience. The phone rang in the other room, snapping Olivia back to reality. She let go of Aiden reluctantly and stood up. It was the police again, updating her on the case. The arrest of Robert and Jennifer Blake had been processed, and the investigation was moving forward. But even as they spoke, Olivia couldn't focus on the details. She was too tired, too emotionally drained. After the call, she sat back down on the couch, gazing out the window at the quiet street. A new life. It felt daunting, but it also felt like a fresh start. There were so many unknowns ahead, so many questions. What would happen to Robert? What would the future hold for her and Aiden? But for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel completely lost. She had Aiden, and that was all she needed. That night, as they sat together in their new home, sharing a simple meal, Olivia realized something profound. In the aftermath of all that had happened, the explosion, the betrayal, the near tragedy, she had found something precious. Not in the house she had lost, or in the life she thought she'd had, but in the bond with her son. A love so deep, so unbreakable, that no one, not even Robert, could ever tear it apart. "Mom, tomorrow can we go for a walk? Just you and me?" Aiden asked, his voice filled with a quiet hope. Olivia smiled softly, nodding. "Of course. We can go for a walk, Aiden. Whatever you need." The night passed quietly, and for the first time in a long while, Olivia slept soundly, knowing that the worst was behind them. There was still so much to face, so many obstacles ahead, but with Aiden by her side, she was ready for whatever came next. As the days turned into weeks, Olivia and Aiden began to settle into their new life. The memories of the old house, of the life they once knew, still lingered, but they no longer defined who they were. Together, they were creating a new chapter, one that was still unfolding, one step at a time. In a way, Olivia realized, everything had changed, but nothing had truly been lost. What mattered most, what always mattered, was the love they shared. And with that love, they could face anything. Olivia sat on the porch of their new home one evening, looking out at the serene lake. The wind rustled through the trees, and the soft sounds of the waves lapping at the shore made everything feel calm, peaceful. She had always dreamed of a life by the water, of quiet moments where she could sit and reflect, far from the noise of the world. Now, she was living that dream, though it had come under the most difficult of circumstances. Beside her, Aiden sat with his head tilted back, staring at the stars that filled the sky above. His presence brought her a sense of grounding she hadn't known she needed. It had only been a few weeks since they had left the wreckage of their old life behind, but it already felt like a lifetime ago. They had been through so much, and yet here they were, together, starting over. "You know," Aiden said quietly, breaking the silence, "I've been thinking. I want to do something big, like a big project. I want to learn more about the stars. There's so much up there, and I want to know how it all works." Olivia smiled, her heart swelling with pride. Her son's curiosity was boundless. "That's a wonderful idea, Aiden. The stars have always fascinated me too. You know, when I was younger, I used to look up at the night sky and wonder about the same things." Aiden turned to her, his eyes shining with excitement. "Do you think I could become an astronomer someday? Like study space for real?" "Of course you can," Olivia said with certainty. "You can be whatever you want to be, as long as you work hard and stay curious. You've already shown me how smart and determined you are." Aiden grinned, and for a moment, Olivia saw a glimpse of the boy she had always known, the boy who, despite everything, still had hope, still believed in the future. "Do you think Dad would have liked that?" Aiden asked softly. The question hung in the air, heavy with emotion. He still didn't fully understand what had happened, but he knew enough to feel the weight of their past. Olivia didn't answer right away. Her heart ached for Aiden, for the innocence that had been stolen from him, but she also knew the importance of moving forward. "I think your dad would have been proud of you no matter what, Aiden. He would have wanted you to chase your dreams, just like I want you to." Aiden nodded slowly, his eyes focused on the water below them. The sound of the waves and the quiet night settled into his heart, and for the first time in a long while, Olivia felt at peace. The night felt like a symbol of everything they had been through and everything that still lay ahead. There would be challenges. There would be days of doubt and uncertainty, but they had each other, and that was all that mattered. "Mom, do you think we'll ever be able to forgive him?" Aiden asked, his voice barely audible. Olivia looked at him, feeling the weight of the question in her own soul. The journey to healing, both for her and for Aiden, would take time, but the answer she gave came from the deepest part of her heart. "I don't know, honey," she said softly, "but I do know that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means letting go of the anger and the pain so that we can move forward. And that's what we're doing now. We're moving forward." Aiden seemed to absorb her words, and she could see the relief in his eyes. It was a small step, but a step nonetheless. She knew they still had a long road ahead, but in that moment, it felt like they had taken the first real step toward healing. As they sat together on the porch, Olivia looked up at the sky, her thoughts drifting to the future. She didn't have all the answers. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she knew one thing for certain. Whatever happened, she and Aiden would face it together. The next morning, Olivia woke early, the soft sunlight streaming through the window. She went about her usual morning routine, preparing breakfast and getting Aiden ready for school. It was a simple day, but she felt a sense of gratitude for the small moments of normalcy. Aiden had been adjusting well to the new school, making new friends, and finding comfort in the stability of their new life. Olivia had been keeping busy too, settling into her job at the local hospital. It wasn't glamorous, but it was fulfilling, and it gave her a sense of purpose. She had always been driven by the desire to help others, and now she felt like she was doing that in a way that mattered. After Aiden left for school, Olivia found herself standing in the kitchen, looking out the window at the lake. She could hear the birds singing, the leaves rustling in the breeze. Life was continuing, despite everything. She thought about Robert and what he had done, about the lies he had told, and the devastation he had caused. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized that holding on to the pain wasn't helping anyone. It wasn't helping her, and it certainly wasn't helping Aiden. She had to let go. It wasn't easy, but Olivia knew that it was time. She had to choose peace. She had to choose her future, and in that future, there was no room for anger or resentment. There was only room for healing, for love, and for the family she was rebuilding, one step at a time. As Olivia went about her day, taking care of the tasks before her, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. There was so much ahead of them, so many possibilities. She had no idea where life would take her next, but she was ready to find out. And when Aiden came home that evening, she knew they would continue moving forward, together, hand in hand. They had a long road ahead of them, but with each passing day, they were finding their way back to the love and hope that had always been within them. The future was uncertain, but one thing was for sure. They had each other, and that was all they needed to begin again. As days passed, Olivia and Aiden settled into their new rhythm. The pain from the past was still there, lingering beneath the surface like an old scar that hadn't quite healed. But with each passing day, the scar seemed less raw. They were finding a new normal, one that wasn't defined by the betrayal that had shattered their family, but by the bond they had with each other. Aiden's curiosity about space grew even more, and Olivia found herself drawn into his world. They spent hours together, reading about the stars, learning about planets, and dreaming about distant galaxies. Sometimes, when the day was done and the house was quiet, they would sit on the porch, staring at the stars, imagining a future filled with endless possibilities. One evening, as they were sitting outside, Aiden turned to his mother with a thoughtful expression. "Mom," he began, "I've been thinking, do you think we could really do anything we want? Like, could we really make our dreams come true?" Olivia smiled, her heart swelling with pride. Her son, so full of potential, was already thinking about the future, about the life he wanted to build, and in that moment, she knew that despite everything they had been through, Aiden had inherited not just his father's height, but also his mother's resilience. "Of course you can, Aiden," she said softly. "You can do anything you set your mind to. No matter what's happened in the past, your future is yours to create." Aiden smiled, his eyes shining with excitement. "I want to be an astronaut," he said, his voice filled with determination. "I want to go to space." Olivia chuckled, ruffling his hair. "I'm sure you'll do great things, Aiden, and I'll be here to cheer you on every step of the way." For the first time in a long while, Olivia allowed herself to believe in the future, to imagine a life not haunted by the past, but filled with hope and possibility. She had always believed in the importance of family, of love, and now, more than ever, she realized how strong the bonds between them truly were. As the months passed, their new life in the small town by Lake Michigan continued to unfold. Aiden thrived in his new school, making new friends and excelling in his studies. Olivia found comfort in her work at the hospital, where she helped people in need, just as she had always dreamed. And although they both still carried the weight of their past, they were learning to let it go piece by piece. One weekend, Olivia and Aiden decided to take a trip to the lake. It was a beautiful, crisp autumn day, and they spent the morning walking along the shore collecting rocks and shells. As they walked, They talked about their dreams, about the future, and about how far they had come. "I can't believe how far we've come, Mom," Aiden said, his voice filled with awe. "It feels like a lifetime ago when everything was falling apart." Olivia smiled softly, her heart full of gratitude. "We've come a long way, Aiden, and we've done it together. That's what matters." They sat by the water, the sun beginning to set behind them, painting the sky with shades of pink and orange. Aiden leaned his head on Olivia's shoulder, and she wrapped her arm around him. In that moment, everything felt right. Everything felt whole. "Mom, do you think we'll ever stop being afraid?" Aiden asked, his voice small. Olivia thought for a moment before answering, her hand resting gently on his. "I don't know, honey. Fear is something we all feel, but it doesn't control us. We don't have to let it stop us from living our lives, from chasing our dreams." Aiden looked up at her, his eyes filled with understanding. "I think you're right, Mom. We can do anything." Olivia kissed the top of his head, feeling a sense of peace settle over her. "Yes, we can. Together." As the stars began to appear in the sky above them, Olivia couldn't help but think about how much her life had changed. She had lost so much, but she had also gained so much more. She had found strength she never knew she had. She had rediscovered love, hope, and the possibility of a brighter future. And she had learned that no matter how dark the night may seem, the stars are always there, waiting to light the way. That night, as they headed back home, Aiden turned to her with a wide smile. "Mom, what do you think? Should we go fishing next weekend?" Olivia laughed, feeling the warmth of her son's excitement fill the car. "Sounds like a great idea. Let's plan it." And as they drove through the quiet streets, heading back to their new home, Olivia knew that despite everything they had faced, they had come through stronger. They had made it together. In the days that followed, their lives continued to unfold in unexpected ways. They settled into their new routine, carving out a life filled with small joys, morning walks by the lake, dinners together, and long talks about their dreams. Every day brought new opportunities for growth, for healing, and for love. And Olivia knew that no matter what the future held, as long as she had Aiden by her side, she could face anything. Together, they were unstoppable. As the days passed, Olivia and Aiden's lives slowly regained a sense of peace and routine. They had made their home in a small town by the lake, a place where everything seemed more calm, more grounded. It was a far cry from the tumultuous past they had left behind, and yet there was something about this place that made Olivia believe they could start fresh. But even in the quiet, there were moments when the shadows of the past crept back in, especially when the phone rang with an unknown number. Olivia would hold her breath, the anxiety returning, only to be relieved when it was someone from her new life, her job at the hospital, a friend from Aiden's school, or a neighbor. Still, there were nights when she would lie awake, the weight of what had happened bearing down on her chest. She couldn't help but replay the betrayal in her mind, how Robert had plotted to kill her, how he had been living a double life. But every time the fear tried to rise, Aiden's laughter or his soft voice calling out to her would pull her back to the present. They were safe now. They had each other, and that was all that truly mattered. One afternoon, as they sat in their new backyard, Olivia thought about how much Aiden had changed in just a few months. He had grown more mature, his face showing a quiet strength that belied his years. The boy who had once been full of wonder about the stars was now full of resolve. Olivia knew that he would grow into someone extraordinary, someone who could weather any storm. Aiden turned to her as they watched the sun setting over the lake. "Mom, do you think we can ever truly be happy again?" Olivia smiled softly, looking at her son. "We already are, Aiden," she said gently. "Happiness isn't about everything being perfect. It's about finding joy in the little things, the moments we share, the love we give, and the hope we hold on to for the future." Aiden nodded thoughtfully. "I think you're right. I never knew how much I needed you until all of this happened." Olivia's heart swelled with love for her son. She had always known that they were each other's greatest strength, but hearing him say it out loud made it all the more real. She hugged him tightly. "You're my everything, Aiden. I will always be here for you, no matter what." It was a promise she had made to herself that day in the car as they drove away from their old life, and it was a promise she would keep for as long as she lived. As the months went by, Olivia began to embrace the possibility of love again. The memories of Robert's betrayal had not faded, but they no longer defined her. She met people in the town who offered her friendship, support, and understanding. She began to open her heart in small ways, learning that healing was a journey, not a destination. She found herself laughing again, truly laughing, for the first time in what felt like forever. One Saturday, after a particularly hard week at the hospital, Olivia sat down with Aiden to have their usual dinner. They had begun to enjoy their quiet meals together. No distractions, no rushing, just the two of them reconnecting. "Mom," Aiden began, his voice soft, "I've been thinking, maybe we could get a dog, someone to keep us company. I read online about this rescue dog named Max. He's a golden retriever. I think he'd be perfect for us." Olivia chuckled at Aiden's enthusiasm. "I think that's a wonderful idea. A dog would definitely bring more joy into our home." And so, the very next weekend, they visited the local shelter. Aiden was beside himself with excitement as they walked through the rows of dogs, each one more adorable than the last. They stopped in front of a kennel where a golden retriever sat wagging his tail. His eyes were kind, and he gave a gentle bark as they approached. "Mom, this is Max," Aiden exclaimed, his face lighting up. Olivia knelt down to pet the dog, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. Max was perfect. He had a calm, gentle energy, much like Aiden. It felt like the right fit. They decided to adopt him, and from that day on, their little family grew by one furry member. Max quickly became a source of joy and comfort for Olivia and Aiden. He would curl up at their feet while they watched movies, go on walks with them by the lake, and greet them excitedly at the door every time they came home. His presence was a constant reminder that even after everything they had endured, there was still beauty in the world, still love, still hope, still new beginnings. One evening, as they sat outside on the porch with Max at their feet, Aiden turned to his mom and smiled. "I think this is the best our life has ever been?" Olivia nodded, feeling a deep sense of peace settle in her heart. "Me too, Aiden. Me too." They sat in silence for a while, the sound of the waves lapping against the shore, the cool evening air around them, and the quiet companionship of their dog. It was a simple, peaceful moment, but for Olivia, it was everything. She had been through hell and back, but now she was free, free to love, free to live, and free to be exactly who she was meant to be. The future was uncertain, but as long as she had Aiden by her side and Max at their feet, Olivia knew they would face whatever came together. She had found a new strength, a strength born from loss, but tempered by love. It was a strength that would carry them through whatever the world had in store, and as the stars twinkled above them that night, Olivia whispered to herself, "We're going to be okay. We're going to be more than okay." And with that thought, she closed her eyes, allowing the quiet peace of the moment to wash over her, knowing that this was their new beginning. The future was bright, and she was ready to face it. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, Olivia and Aiden's life in the quiet lakeside town continued to unfold with small joys and new discoveries. Each day was another step in their healing process, another chapter of their new life. While the shadows of the past never fully disappeared, they had learned to live with them, to coexist with the memories of betrayal, loss, and the harrowing escape. Yet, it was in the midst of these painful reminders that they had also discovered something precious: resilience. Max, their golden retriever, had become more than just a pet. He was a friend, a confidant, and a source of unwavering loyalty. Aiden had grown even closer to the dog, often spending hours in the yard, playing fetch or simply sitting together in the sun. Olivia couldn't help but smile as she watched the bond between them grow. It was the kind of unconditional love that both of them needed after the heartbreak they had endured. One Sunday afternoon, Olivia and Aiden were sitting on their porch with Max lying peacefully at their feet, the sun casting a warm golden light across the yard. Aiden had just finished reading a book, and Olivia was enjoying the rare quiet moment after a busy week at the hospital. As she sipped her tea, Aiden looked up from his book and turned to her with a thoughtful expression. "Mom, do you think we'll ever find out why Dad did it? Why he wanted to hurt us?" Olivia took a deep breath, the question piercing through the stillness of the afternoon. She had been avoiding that question for months, unsure of how to answer it without reopening old wounds. But as she looked at her son, her heart swelled with love and a sense of duty to provide him with the truth, even if it was a painful one. "I don't know, sweetheart," Olivia said softly, placing her cup down and turning to face him. "I don't think I'll ever truly understand why he did what he did, but one thing I do know is that it wasn't your fault, and it wasn't mine. We did nothing wrong." Aiden nodded, though his expression remained serious. "I just keep thinking, maybe if I had told you sooner, we could have stopped it. Maybe I could have saved you sooner." Olivia reached out and gently cupped his face in her hands. "Aiden, you saved me. You did what any child would do to protect their mother. You were brave, and I'm so proud of you." Aiden looked down at his hands, still processing the weight of what had happened. "I don't feel brave. I just wanted to make sure you were safe." Olivia smiled, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead. "You are brave, Aiden. You're stronger than I ever imagined. And you've taught me what true courage really is. What we've been through, we'll never forget it, but we can't let it control us. We've got our own story now, and it's one of strength, love, and second chances." Aiden looked up at his mom, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "You're right, Mom. We do have our own story, and it's just beginning, isn't it?" Olivia hugged her son tightly, feeling the weight of her own tears threatening to fall. "Yes, sweetheart, our story is just beginning." As the evening settled in, the two of them sat there in silence, listening to the soft rustling of the leaves and the distant lapping of the waves. It was a moment of peace, a moment that seemed to stretch on forever, as though the world had paused just for them. Olivia felt a deep sense of gratitude for the life she was now living. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers, and it was enough. The phone rang, breaking the stillness, and Olivia stood up to answer it. As she glanced at the caller ID, her heart skipped a beat. It was a number she didn't recognize, but it had an area code from her old town. For a moment, she hesitated. She hadn't heard from anyone there since she left, and she had no idea who could be calling. Taking a deep breath, she answered. "Hello?" "Olivia, it's Linda. Linda from the hospital." Her heart surged with a mix of emotions. Linda had been one of her closest friends back in Greenville, someone who had supported her through the toughest times at the hospital. Olivia had missed her dearly, but she had been hesitant to reach out. After everything with Robert, she wasn't sure how to reconnect with her old life. "Linda? Oh my gosh! I didn't expect to hear from you," Olivia said, her voice trembling slightly. "How are you?" "I'm doing well," Linda replied warmly, "but I've been thinking about you a lot lately. We all have. How are you and Aiden?" Olivia swallowed the lump in her throat. "We're okay. Better than okay, actually. We've found a new life here by the lake." "That's so good to hear. I'm glad you're both doing well. Listen, Olivia, I know things have been difficult, and I don't want to bring up painful memories, but I wanted you to know that Robert's trial is finally over. It's been 3 months, and things are moving forward. The case has gone to court, and I just wanted to tell you that you have so many people here who still care about you." Olivia felt her heart constrict at the mention of Robert's trial. It felt like a lifetime ago, but the wounds were still fresh. The thought of facing everything again, even from a distance, stirred a sense of unease in her. But she knew that Linda was offering her a lifeline, a reminder that her past didn't have to define her. "Thank you, Linda. I appreciate that more than you know," Olivia said quietly, "but I think it's time for me to let go of that chapter completely. Aiden and I are moving forward." "I completely understand," Linda replied, her voice soft, "and I'll support you no matter what. Just know that you're never far from my thoughts." As Olivia hung up the phone, she felt a strange sense of closure. The past was behind her, and now she had a future to look forward to, a future with Aiden, with Max, and with the hope that no matter what happened, they would always be together. The stars sparkled brightly in the night sky, a reminder that there was still beauty in the world, even after all the darkness. Olivia wrapped her arms around Aiden once more, feeling his warmth and strength. They had made it through the hardest part, and now, together, they were ready for whatever came next, because as long as they had each other, they had everything. And so, their story continued, filled with hope, love, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. End.